Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 96. Models Memories is a show about nothing that is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargaming experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 YouTube videos a week. How could you possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, Games Workshop showed off a couple of new models. I started working on a new army, and I built a Titan this week. But first, I want to talk about this video sponsor. Sometimes I can't be painting. Sometimes I'm waiting in line at the bank, waiting for the bus, or waiting for my Hot Pocket to heat up in the microwave. I can't be lost in the world of fantasy miniatures, but luckily, I have Raid Shadow Legends to keep me company. Raid Shadow Legends is an amazing game with millions of players with over 80 million downloads already. With the new year comes new raids and the new Forge Pass, where you can earn in-game points to unlock legendary champions and more. There are so many to choose from, nearly 700, including a new faction called the Sylvan Watchers. This faction has forest elves, tree spirits, and rock monsters, all from the deep dark Mistwood. And speaking of champions, you might want to vote on your favorite starter champion. Copy your in-game player ID, then go to championselect.plarium and enter your player ID to vote for your favorite starter champion and win in-game and real-life prizes. And to any MMA and pro wrestling fans out there, Ronda Rousey is now available in the world of Raid. So why not give Raid Shadow Legends a try? Follow the link in the description below or scan the QR code on the screen to start playing Raid Shadow Legends today and gain some in-game loot. You also get a free starter pack with my link to help you on your raids. And don't forget about MMA megastar Ronda. You can get her simply by opening Raid 7 days before February 20th. You can use the promo code RAIDRONDA to get a bunch of useful in-game items to help her level up. Enter the promo code in-game and all the goodies will be sent straight to your inbox. Games Workshop has been coming out with monster after monster for the wonderful game Necromunda, and I want to take a little look at these suckers. Of course, we all remember the roly-poly-olies from last week, and this week, the Outland Beastmasters are back with more bothersomely burrowing bug buddies. BBBB, I get it. That is funny joke, Games Workshop community article writers. Little wormy dudes. Man, Games Workshop is managing to strike a really nice balance between gruesome, grotesque, grungy creatures, but also have them be kind of really cute. Oh, I also like that the Beastmaster is wearing one of the little wormy dudes as like a cloak, and the head of the monster is over his own head as a hood. It's just a fun little adorable thing. I also like that this random dude has like a 2,000-pound cast iron little cauldron thing strapped to his back that he's handling just fine. I mean, he's just got one chain around his chest, and that's managing to keep that humongous thing attached. It's awesome. These Liqerise invertebrates were likely smuggled onto Necromunda centuries ago, courtesy of the planet's lax import control. To help clear debris and other critters from mining tunnels, left unchecked, these voracious worms have by now spread across much of the planet, from outland ore pits to underhive sump nests. Interesting. So they're a sort of invasive species. That's great. Man, Necromunda is so neat. Like, 40k, one of the tricky things with 40k lore sometimes is it's always so grandiose and epic. It's a little bit like in Star Wars, how every time they land on a planet, there's like one town or one city, and that's just the entire planet. There's one conflict going on the entire planet. Where in reality, a planet would have like a humongous ecosystem and a million billion different things going on. This was like a big thing in the Eisenhorn novels, where they would land on a planet and they would always land right in the middle of the big humongous goings on. And there would be like 3 people who are in charge of this whole thing, or the perpetrators of this entire crime. And it's just Eisenhorn up against this whole planet, when in reality it's just 3 guys. But Necromunda manages to really get into all of the nitty gritties. Like, I feel like I know way more about just the planet Necromunda, or just the hive city of Necromunda. It's just one place. It's one spot. Granted, it's a city the size of Texas, but one location gets so much love and such a lovely treatment compared to like anything else in all of 40k. It reminds me a lot of, there's a great book, I forget who is the author, but the art and direction is by Tara Whitlatch, a really, really nice paleontology artist. It's a Star Wars book. It's beautiful, the field guide to Star Wars. If you like Star Wars, if you like the lore and like the history behind Star Wars, it's a beautiful, lovely book to pick up. I remember I checked the book out so often from my local library when I was a kid that I ruined it. Like, I ruined the book just by reading it so many times. But that book has all sorts of like the Kadu from Naboo and how they work within the ecological niches that exist on their planet, and how every different creature and has a place to be on its planet and its own life cycle and its own ways of doing things. And that's kind of what I feel like a little bit with the Necromunda. All of these little critters, they all exist, and they all exist for a reason. For some reason, they're like, we could really use something to get rid of all of the debris and the other little critters running around in our caves. So let's just get these horrible monsters and dump them in there. Ooh, it actually reminds me a little bit of the movie Mimic, which is a good movie, but I feel like it's a little bit not perfectly done because you never really get a good look at the mimics or what's going on. But in Mimic, and not spoiler alert, this is like the first 5 seconds of the movie, they invented a super cockroach to kill other cockroaches because there was like a plague going on, and they found out that the cockroaches were a carrier, and so they invented a new beetle that went and ate all of the other beetles. But then, of course, then just Jurassic Park ensues, basically. But man, that movie is full of creepy crawlies, and Necromunda is full of creepy crawlies. Good old Mimic. Don't watch the sequels. The sequels are really, really bad. These beasties can infiltrate any environment, and the Beastmaster who trained them shares the same skill, having learned to wiggle through the tunnels bored by their pets. Aww. So the little worms they're digging a hole, and then this guy and his gigantic backpack thing is just wiggling right beside him. So all of these creatures have like the intelligence of dogs, at least, which is kind of fun to think about. Ooh, you know what other thing that this reminds me of is one of the greatest movie franchises of all time, Tremors. Tremors is perfection. I would say the first 4 movies are fantastic. Yeah, the first 4. The other ones, the newer ones coming out, not that good. The TV show on the Sci-Fi Channel was actually surprisingly great. It's too bad it got canceled. But yeah, these guys are like the in-between of the Graboids and the Shriekers, which is just wonderful. I love it. Did Games Workshop steal the idea for Graboids with these creatures? Probably not, because other than being worms, they look nothing alike, but I'm gonna say that Games Workshop did steal them because they hate the fans. But yeah, Necromunda continues to be one of the coolest looking games from 40K. It looks really, really cool, and I would love to get into Necromunda, but I already play so many Necromunda-like games. I feel like Titanicus, Adeptus Titanicus is the one that's really calling my name, because speaking of Titans, holy cow, speaking of Titans, I spent the entire week putting together a Warhound Titan, and I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't gonna be fun. But I was not prepared for the ordeal it was going to be. I fixed up a Titan that had already existed in the world. It had been put together, it had been primed black, and it had fallen apart. And man, I have another little piece here because I actually have a second Warhound Titan new in Forge World baggies. But these models are cool. They're very cool and interesting units, and they add a nice flavor to 40K. And Games Workshop, I think, has done the best job of gigantic things in their game because they barely exist. Like, there's other games like Drop Zone Commander or what's the one with the Warjacks? War Machine and Hordes, where they have humongous units that are very expensive, although not even close to as expensive as Forge World charges for these Titans. But they always feel a little awkward in the game because they either are very weak or they're sort of overpowered and then the rules change to make them very weak. It's where the way Forge World does it and the way Games Workshop does it is these Titans are just a gag. Like they can be good or they can have decent rules, but you see them so rarely, really only for Apocalypse games Or maybe the Warhound Titan because it's 2,000 points, and so it could just squeeze into like a 2,000 or a 2,500 point game of 40k. But they barely exist. They're almost like a legend in the game of 40k. And really, the reason you bring them to the tabletop is purely for the spectacle and to show off the fact that you actually own one of these things, as opposed to them being a real thing in the game. I almost wonder if that's why Forge World is allowed to continue, because Forge World is the most obnoxious thing ever. It made sense initially in like the very, very early 2000s, where Forge World resin was much better than Games Workshop plastic, and probably better than Games Workshop metal. But as Games Workshop very quickly learned everything there was to know about plastic, and now their plastic kits are basically perfect, Forge World resin sucks. It really does. It's miserable to work with. And resin is a great material for miniatures because it captures very fine details very nicely, and I have lots of lovely resin miniatures. The problem with Forge World's resin is Forge World makes Games Workshop models, and Games Workshop models are often customized, converted, sometimes you put in magnets, and you have to Dremel and cut and carve these things, and you're releasing that poisonous resin dust into the air and just ruining your day to try to get one of these suckers built, and it's awful. But maybe Forge World is kept around because there is that separation between a Forge World model and a real 40k model. And so maybe nobody minds that Forge World stuff can be so weird or so ridiculous or so unbelievably expensive because it's not really a Games Workshop model, it's a Forge World model. It'd be like if Atomic Mass Games came out with an AT-AT for Star Wars Legion that was $800, but it wasn't made by Atomic Mass Games, or it wasn't made by Asmodee, it was made by, I don't know, Corvus Belli for some unbelievable reason. Like, it would shift a lot of the blame to the other company while letting everyone enjoy the fact that there is now a really cool AT-AT model. It's such a weird thing. I would love to sit down with somebody at Games Workshop, maybe James Workshop himself, and just be like, what are you trying to do with Forge World? Like, Forge World, the reason Forge World exists is because Forge World made terrain and specialty statues of things from 40k and fantasy battle strategy game or whatever, Warhammer Fantasy. That's the reason Forge World existed. And then very quickly, they came out with their series that was just other things from the 40k universe that were big or small or sometimes not available, and then quickly discontinued. Forge World is absolutely bizarre, and their miniatures are fine. I wonder though, would the Forge World Titans be as enticing if they hadn't have existed for the last 2 decades? If we hadn't all seen them in White Dwarves and every now and then at an Apocalypse game or some big event, these monstrous Titans. The Warhound I built weighs 10 pounds. It's going to break. It's impossible for it not to break because it's way too heavy. I think with this second Warhound, because I've learned a lot with the first Warhound I built, and so every single chance I get, I'm going to drill out as much resin as I possibly can to try to lighten it a little bit. It will make it more fragile, but it's not like it's going to survive a drop. Like, it's KO'd if I ever drop the sucker. So it doesn't matter if I make it hollow or not. It's just going to help with the magnetization and getting it put together and carrying it around from place to place. Ooh, and speaking of carrying it around from place to place, I've been thinking about how do you transport a model like a Titan? Because the only way really is to just grab it by the feet and just walk it places. But I kind of want to build a really nice case for it. I've been watching a lot of Adam Savage one day builds, and he loves to build cases for all of his wonderful props and inventions. And I think that would actually be the perfect thing for a Titan. Maybe a nice, like, kind of like a suitcase or an old trunk, probably with a glass or plexiglass face so that you can see into it. And maybe some of the supports that are keeping the Titan pinned down are actually like made, like maybe I'll make Nick 3D print me something that looks like girders and walkways so that you close it up and it kind of looks like a diorama of a Warhound Titan being maintained inside of some huge facility. And then you can just carry it by a handle. I mean, you could probably get it through TSA if it was in a really nice case like that. But as they are, man, the Titans. I would tell anybody thinking about a Titan to instead invest that money in anything else. We got a great comment where someone was like, I did not know that model cost 5.5 PS5s. Which is, it's just outrageous how redonkulous these things are in price. And like for the Warhound Titan costs, I think, $775.50. And with that money, you could buy everything you want for Malifaux, everything you want for like a Song of Ice and Fire strategy battles game, everything you want. Probably you still have enough money left over for Conquest Last Argument of Kings, and a super cool board game like Nemesis or Root. Like you could have a gaming year with that much money, or one single Forge World Titan, and the smallest Titan that they sell at that. It's bonkers, it's bananas, but it's part of Games Workshop's charm that they're so outrageous and over the top and dumb and brilliant. It's the weirdest thing in the whole world. 40K and Games Workshop and miniature wargaming in general is just the weirdest little thing. And that's why I love it so much. But man, these Titan models are crazy. And I was very excited to be done with this project so I could finally get back to work on other things like miniatures or getting ready for Adepticon. But we put out a challenge. If the build video got 5,000 likes, which is a lot for us, we would immediately start work on painting this sucker. It got there in like 5 hours of the video going live. So I've cleaned off the painting desk, I have plunked down this behemoth, and I have begun work. And the painting is actually going much better than the building. The building was really, really rough. I now applaud anybody out there who actually has a constructed one of these things. But I have begun to paint it and bring it to life. And it is kind of glorious in all of its horrible Games Workshop Forge Worldiness. It is really, really cool. But something that I'm even more excited about than a Titan, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's one model that I'm gonna play with 3 times in my life. And I probably got 3 Apocalypse games left in me, and that's gonna be it for this one single model that is unbelievably expensive. But I've also been working on an entire army. For Conquest Last Argument of Kings, I've been working on an old Dominion army, and it's lovely. It's lovely just every now and again, a couple of nights a week, I'll just build some of these miniatures, and then I get to put them on the shelf, and I get to see a whole army start to come to life. I got to demo Conquest Last Argument of Kings. I still don't know what this argument about, but it is with kings. I got to demo this game last year at Adepticon, and it was really fun. It was my first experience with a rank and flank strategy wargame, and it's really neat. It's a very different feel to a lot of the skirmish or big war games that I've played before. And so I am very excited to get some games in and get some armies built for this new style of war game. And another great thing I love about Conquest Last Argument of Kings is look at the size of these models. These are normal dudes. Well, I guess these aren't normal dudes. This is a normal dude. He's taller than a Primaris Space Marine. And this is just a normal, bog standard, nothing special skeleton with a spear. These units are for the faction the Old Dominion, which are zombie Romans. Love it. And they're humongous, beautiful models. I can't wait to get the chance to paint these guys up. I think I'm going to build them all and then base them all and then see if I can just crank this army out at some point, because I've never really done that. I was planning on doing that with my Grey Knights army, which is still sitting in a box, and I'm sure I'll get to it one day. I'm sure of it. But I think it'll be really fun to paint them all up in one go and just see what happens, because I love to paint unit, sometimes just figure, but they all end up very different. Sometimes my styles slide around, or sometimes the colors I use change because I don't write anything down. Trying to fix that, but I don't write anything down, and so sometimes my colors will be wonky and change. My Black Templar are 50 shades of gray because I've been painting them for 10 years, and man, if you really examine those models, there's a lot of variety going on there. And so I think it'd be really cool to be able to finish an army and just put a period at the end of it and say it's done and it's wonderful and they all look pretty darn good together. I mean, it's a statue with magic making it animated. It's great. It's a golem. It's lovely. Yeah, very, very excited for Conquest. Look at the size of that horse. That's a big old horse. I'm not exactly sure what scale Conquest is in, but I think it's gonna lead to some really, really fun painting because these models are big. And big models, they do take a little longer because they're more surface area, but there's also it's a lot easier to get into those details and really bring them out because they're physically a lot bigger. I can use a bigger paintbrush. I can probably do a little bit more with the airbrush to make things move a little quicker. And it's just gonna be great. It's gonna be great to have an entire table of miniatures as opposed to a single miniature. Oh, Forge World. I will celebrate the day that Forge World is done. I predict that one day Forge World will just be the 30K character series, and that's it. And everything else will have moved to Games Workshop proper and be made into lovely plastic kits that are actually fun to put together and cost too much, but don't cost ridiculous amounts of money. But Conquest Last Argument of Kings, pretty cool game. I'll have to get some more demos in this year at Adepticon so that I really know my chops. Once I have these guys painted up, I can teach my friends how to play and then I'll force them to play it with me. I'm sure I won't have to force. I'm sure some of my friends will love to pick up some Conquest stuff. But it's always a big ask, a war game, and so it's fun it's always good to go in knowing everything and having everything, so that all they have to do is just sit down and try. That's always a good way of doing it, as opposed to being like, okay, so you want to play the Nords. You're going to need to buy this starter box. You're going to need to get these 2 expansions. You're going to need to figure out what those cards mean. You're going to need to download this app so that you can plan your battles and you can pick your factions, pick your armies. Oh, and make sure that you're thinking about colors, because some of the colors mean different things in the lore. And so if you want your guys to be a certain way, you have to do this and that. It's always best just to be like, I got a fresh case of Diet Dew. I got some Tostino's pizza rolls. Why don't we just have an evening and just enjoy ourselves and try this new game out? And speaking of new, Necromunda was not the only game from Games Workshop to get a new miniature this week. We also got a nice sneaky sniper. The Alpha Legion's best assassin is Deception Made Manifest. The Alpha Legion is the best 30K Legion by a long shot. And I know not everybody agrees with me, because every Legion has some lovely lore, and I made a video where I went through all of the lore for every single Legion, and everybody in the comments told me how I got everything wrong, but I still read all that stuff and it still made sense to me. Every Legion has a little something in it that makes it really cool and really special, but a lot of it comes down to the lore, where the Alpha Legion has the coolest models. A lot of the Space Marine chapters are just the same models, but in different colors, or with the slightest of eccentricities, like the helmet swaps. But the Alpha Legion, Games Workshop nailed it with texture. The simplest little thing, a little scale texture here and there, makes all the difference in the world to how these miniatures actually look. And I can't believe, I don't know if they figured out Alpha Legion last, but why not sprinkle a little bit of texture into some of the other factions, the other 30K Legions? Like, I mean, you used up scales, so how about like some bumpy texture, maybe for the Space Wolves to represent some kind of fur, or maybe instead of, the scale mail, come up with a fur armor texture that you can put on the Space Wolves, or some kind of a technological or machinery texture to go on the Iron Hands, or something really boring and plain for the Ultramarines. Like, there is so much you could have done to just sprinkle a little bit of different stuff into the Legions. But instead, they're all just normal Space Marines that are different colors. Maybe they're holding some different types of weapons. Maybe they have a little bit of fanciness going on, like the Blood Angels and the Emperor's Children have some fun kind of Art Nouveau designs going on with some swoopy golden filigree. But other than that, really, if you took a normie or your mom and you show them all of these different Space Marines, they probably wouldn't be able to really figure out, like, okay, well, these ones are Blood Angel, or like, are the red ones a different army than the blue ones, or the black ones, or the other color of black ones, or the other color of black ones, or the dark greenish black ones? Like, there's not, but the Alpha Legion are pearlescent blue with neon green highlights and scale mail. They look really, really different, and they look lovely. And speaking of looking lovely, this model looks lovely. I love the helmet with all of its weird lenses, and then you've got even more lenses on the backpack that are kind of looking around with the helmet, like the Predator's little shoulder cannon from the Predator movies. And a little antenna. And the antenna, I think it might just be like an LED indicator or something, but I like to think that that antenna has another little camera on it. That's just looking around at things. I love the rifle, and the rifle harkens back to really early Rogue Trader 40k. One of the first plastic weapons available in 30k was long las rifles they were skinny and they always snapped, but they had this really, really long ribbed foregrip, and they've taken that idea and they brought it into this weapon design. That foregrip looks redonkulous, but it fits right at home in the world of 40k. That's a standard issue design principle of Warhammer, that really long ribbed foregrip, and it is lovely. I also love a bolt action rifle that has some sort of a fire selector. Either it has like built-in automatic operation, which seems impossible if the bolt physically locks, but I'm sure in the world of 40k it works perfectly. It's got 3 pips, so presumably it's got a safe bolt action and rock and roll setting, but it's great. It's lovely. It's got the Hydra heads on the buttstock of the gun. It's got the scope that seems to be somewhat melted into the barrel. He's got little vials of poison. I love the very, very subtle, like geometric camouflaging going on the backpack that integrates their kind of blue scheme into this camouflage pattern. I love the tactical rock. I mean, that's a very nice tactical rock. It's got good height, good size, really gives the model a little bit of presence. A+ tactical rock. I love that the bottom of his dick banner has a big metal chunk that's slamming into his legs with every step he takes. Like, it would make sense to have one in each corner, but to have them actually connected into a big long scoop is wonderful. It's a wonderfully over the top, wonderful 40k model. Could not possibly be mistaken for any other Space Marine Legion. It is a brilliant, brilliant model. The Alpha Legion really are the best Space Marines in terms of looks, aesthetic, and overall design, and they got a really, really cool sniper dude. And of course, because it's Alpha Legion, there might be one. This might be one guy named Exodus, or they have thousands of this one guy called Exodus. And they would never know, and no one else would ever know. And, you know, he could show up on, like, he could be there. It could just be that when you are set up to do this operation in the warfare, you are called the Exodus, or it could be literally one guy who almost magically pops up everywhere because the Alpha Legion are cool like that. And you know what else is cool like that? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have a new terrain pack available monthly. This month, we have the Dark Factorum, a grim dark factory full of blood and viscera and violence and steel. Super, super modular, coming in at over 75 components. We also have a welcome pack to new signups that includes Dawn of War-inspired Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Eldar terrain, all hosted by Comics, Games, and Things. We make one extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week where we take a look at our viewers' miniatures and give them some ideas and critiques of how to improve their painting, and we host painting guide PDFs. We also have a new tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines and you can join the Legion. And if you were planning on picking up any minis in the near future, like the new Vanguard Slaves to Darkness box for Age of Sigmar, you want to check out Valhalla Hobby, a lovely little game store with a lovely online store, and if you use our code, you can get 5% off your first order. Putting together some of those Conquest Last Argument of Kings miniatures was a lovely little departure, but I really got to get back to the world of Forge World Titan, so wish me luck, bye-bye.